Hello, my name is Catherine Gloston, and this is my Module 1 discussion presentation. I'll be discussing technology leadership in a non public school. In this presentation, I will be discussing some background about Concordia Lutheran School, which we call CLS. What is technology leadership at CLS, 5 imperatives for technology leadership, 10 essential skills for technology leaders, and a brief conclusion with some takeaways. So, about CLS. CLS is a non-public pre-K 3 through 8th grade school located in Marrero, Louisiana. We have one teacher per grade level, and each teacher is technically we're supposed to teach a maximum number of 20 kids, 20 students. However, we have gone over our maximum number with no more than 25 students. We are a growing school with approximately 140 students that are scheduled to return to school next year. Before I discuss technology leadership at CLS, first I'd like to discuss what is technology leadership. So initially, I wanted to come up with my own definition, but I needed to really reflect on the actual resources that were given. And one source actually defined technology leadership as the study and ethical practice of facilitating learning and improving performance by creating, using, and managing appropriate technological processes and resources. I, in turn, used our resources for Module 1 and came up with my own definition. So I define technology leadership as the ability to facilitate, implement, and integrate technological readiness that is effective and meaningful, and creates a vision of how technology will enhance the learning environment where all stakeholders are considered. At CLS, we have a school leadership that consists of our board, our principal, our vice principal, the dean, which is me, and I also fall in the category of teachers because I actually teach grades 5 through 8 math. Each of these leaders, they play a part in some way in our technology leadership, whether it is a part of the ethics part or the planning and budgeting. They all play some type of part. And I'll discuss those a little bit further when we get into our essential skills. So first, I wanted to talk about the 5 imperatives for technology leadership. I call these the necessities because these are all things that technology leaders should definitely do. The very first one talks about strengthening district leadership and communications. And so basically, that's being the change agent. Be the change that you want to see. So if you're looking for change, similar to how we are as teachers, we want our students to perform a certain way and we model, similar to that I do, we do, you do. We actually, as technology leaders, we should actually do that as well. Walk the walk, talk the talk. If you want something that's, if you want it to be done a certain way, then show everyone how you want it so then they can actually give you back the same or similar results. The second one is raise the bar with rigorous, transformative, and innovative learning skills. And just the key thing that stuck out to me was more than standards. So standards alone, they don't help with learning. Many of us, we would have loved to learn more about electronics, technology, engineering, and medical fields while we were going through school. Not just in high school, but maybe early on in our middle school. So now we have our schools that's working to implement those college and career skills, but we have to remember to continue to raise the bar with our learning skills to make sure that our students are not only ready for school, but they're also ready for life beyond school. We need to make sure that the third thing says transform your pedagogy with compelling learning environments. And that made me remember that as technology leaders, technology enhances learning. So we have to remember that when we are using that technology, we still need to take into consideration our educators, our learners, the content, and the resources that we're using. Fourth, support professional development and communities of practice. Elaborate and connect. 2 keywords. As technology leaders, we must help other educators even if we have to design our own professional development. For example, many of my students many of my parents and my students, as well as my teachers, they weren't familiar with Google Classroom. So instead of us going out and searching for someone to do that professional development to help our teachers and our parents feel more comfortable, I actually developed a professional development wherein I worked with our teachers, I worked with our parents and our students to give them insights and directions on how to properly use Google Classroom. And I was able to make sure that if they didn't feel comfortable coming back to me with questions, that they actually had a teacher that they could go to and feel comfortable asking those questions. I even encouraged our teachers to connect with each other for additional assistance. So being open and willing to help those who want to further their learning about tech tools definitely is a big part of being a tech leader. Finally, the assessments. This is something that at our school now we're realizing that we were not in compliance with. We weren't really implementing, is creating balanced assessments. So transforming our assessments, not just using that data that we got from those assessments to after the actual lesson, but using it so that we can catch it while we're actually teaching. So there are some applications, like I went out and I purchased an application called Go Formative. And that way I got that live feedback and I was able to give it back without always being verbal, but drawing my feedback or typing responses. And that helped my students along the way. So next up is the 10 essential skills of technology leaders. So the Consortium for School Networking, which is one of the resources that we've been using, they developed a framework with 10 essential skills of technology leaders. And those skills, they were placed into these three primary professional categories. The very first one was leadership and vision, then understanding the educational environment, and then finally managing technology and support resources. So I'm going to break those down and use some examples from what I've noticed in CLS as far as those skills and how they're used in our school. So the first category, leadership and vision, it has three skills. First is leadership and vision. Second is strategic planning. And then third is ethics and policies. Now, in this leadership and vision category, our whole leadership team plays a part, from our board to our principal, vice principal, as well as the dean. They all play a part in this big category. Leadership and vision deals with basically creating that vision on how you actually are going to have an effective and meaningful use of technology, and making sure that that's actually led. And then from there, you have your strategic planning, which is your steps and your objectives, action plans, and then your ethics, which is like your privacy. For example, our school this past school year was faced with virtual learning. Very, very different for us. All right. And so here is where big example comes in. In this case, we were placed with our leadership and our vision. We actually visualized where we would have hybrid setting. We'd have our students that were in class, and we actually have our students that were virtual. And they'll be able to use Google Classroom, Google Meet, Meetup, and we visualized how we wanted everything to flow. Then we came through with a strategic plan. So we presented the leadership and the vision that all came from the board. All four parties played a part. Then when we got to the planning, which was the steps, that's where the principal, the vice principal, and the dean came in. Because then we came up with the steps that we need to use to implement this vision. And then from there, we had to recognize that there was some privacy and some policies that we had to take into consideration to ensure that we were protecting our students and their personal identifiable information. And so that's where we made sure that we were following those state laws and making sure that we were protecting our students. The next category, understanding the educational environment, it has three skills. First up, instructional focus and professional development, then team building and staffing, and then our stakeholder focus. So the instructional focus and professional development, that's our planning of the continuous training of the technology. And then when you get into the team building and staffing, that's where we were creating this big support for our educators and making sure that everybody was familiar or they were getting the assistance they needed with the technology, as well as making sure that when we first started into this, that we were hiring teachers who were willing to work with this new form of learning. And then finally, the sixth, which is the stakeholder focus, it dealt with ensuring that we had this effective use of technology that was meeting our goals. All right, or we were partnering with groups that would help us with our technology program. Again, going back to our first year of using Google Classroom and Google Meet, more than what we had done in the past. We had to start off with this instructional focus and professional development, which, like I stated earlier, we worked with our teachers to make sure that they knew what Google Classroom was, how to use Google Meet, and we made sure that they used that as the tool, but it wasn't the actual focus. It wasn't the primary thing. So the principal, vice principal, and myself, we actually, worked together, and I created a professional development after we all panned out an idea. And then that led us into building teams, wherein our principal was over 3 grade levels, our vice principal was over 3 grade levels, and the dean was over the middle school. And we were able to work with each of our teachers to build them up where they felt they were uncomfortable. And then finally, our stakeholder focus is where we were setting our goals. We wanted to make sure they were still implementing the standards. However, they were able to grow with their use of technology. And we were able to collaborate and come back to make sure that we were using everything effectively. The final category is managing technology and support resources, which deals with our information technology, communication systems, but business management and data management. Now, the IT part, I'll tell you, that was basically me, probably by myself. Majority of the time, I dealt with the security, making sure that from firewalls to blocking certain material, maintenance, making sure that the devices were actually up to date and were actually usable, because you'd have some devices that just weren't up to par. And then as well as making sure that they were actually managed by us. Communication system deals with our emails, our training of how to use our school messaging system, even our website. So this is our principal, our vice principal, and myself. We all played a part in this, but that whole setup part and maintenance and training, a lot of that came from the vice principal and myself, because we were more familiar with that, and we worked with the school messaging system and the email system. Then the 9th one is our business management, and that technically I probably didn't play a big role in that at all. Our vice principal, she deals with our finances, so she actually worked to be able to budget, negotiate with vendors, making sure that we had we actually went 1-to-1 with iPad, so she actually worked that out. And then she was able to get certain software. She set up certain professional developments that weren't technology related, but she was making sure that we had all of those things. And even though it wasn't technology related, we still had to use technology in order to get those skills that we needed. Then finally, our data management, and that dealt with me, and basically it was just pulling our reportings from Google Classroom with our Google suite that we have, and making sure that everything was being used properly, and that we were able to use that to better adjust for our next school year. So in conclusion, I've learned a lot about the strengths and weaknesses of the technology leadership at CLS. We are truly different than other organizations, but that makes us unique. This module made me realize some things that we need to work to implement in our school that may help our teachers feel more comfortable with technology. This could actually be key to strengthening our technology leadership. I also realized that there are some things that I cannot do on my own, and so I've learned to let others assist and work their way into becoming a technology leader. At the end of this module, I've learned that technology leadership, it involves a lot of skills, but with the right team, anything is possible. Here's the references that I used throughout my presentation. This slide template was created by SlidesGo. Thank you so much for your time, and I welcome any feedback.